Hi James, thanks for meeting me today. I've been reading about historical eating habits, and I'm really fascinated by how food choices have changed over time.
Hi, Anna. I'm excited to discuss this topic with you. Eating habits tell us a lot about culture and society. What specific time period are you interested in?
I was thinking about the Middle Ages. I've heard that people ate very differently back then.
Absolutely. During the Middle Ages, the diet varied greatly depending on social class. The rich enjoyed a variety of meats, spices, and sweets, while the poor mainly ate bread and porridge.
That's interesting. Why did the rich have access to such diverse foods?
It had a lot to do with wealth and trade. The wealthy could afford to import exotic foods from faraway places. Spices like pepper and cinnamon were very valuable. They were often used not just for flavor, but also for preserving food.
I see. And what about the poor? Did they have any interesting dishes?
Yes. Even though their diet was limited, they made the best of what they had. They often used grains and vegetables to make hearty stews. They also relied on seasonal produce.
That sounds quite healthy. Did people in the Middle Ages eat fruits and vegetables?
Yes, but it depended on the region and the season. Fruits like apples and berries were common, but many people believed that some vegetables were unhealthy. For example, they thought that eating too many beans could cause illness.
That's surprising. I thought vegetables were always considered healthy.
It's interesting how beliefs about food can change over time. In fact, during the Renaissance, there was a shift in attitudes. People began to appreciate fruits and vegetables more, especially with the influence of Mediterranean diets.
So, the Renaissance was a turning point for eating habits?
Definitely. This period saw the introduction of new foods from the Americas, like tomatoes and potatoes. These foods changed European diets significantly.
I've heard that potatoes were once considered poisonous.
That's true. When potatoes were first introduced, many Europeans were suspicious. They thought they belonged to the nightshade family, which included toxic plants. It took a long time for potatoes to become a staple food.
That's fascinating. What about beverages? I know that water wasn't always safe to drink.
Exactly. In the Middle Ages, people often drank ale or mead instead of water. Even children drank these beverages because they were safer than contaminated water.
What about tea and coffee? When did they become popular?
Tea became popular in Europe in the 17th century, while coffee followed closely behind. Both beverages were initially luxury items enjoyed by the wealthy before becoming more widely available.
I can imagine tea houses becoming social spots back then.
Yes, they became important cultural centers. People gathered to drink tea and discuss ideas. This was especially true in Britain, where tea culture developed into a significant social ritual.
Speaking of rituals, how did eating habits reflect societal changes?
Great question. For example, during the Industrial Revolution, people moved to cities for work. This change affected how and what they ate. Many began to rely on processed foods because they had less time to cook.
That makes sense. Convenience seems to be a big factor in modern eating habits too.
Absolutely. Fast food and ready-made meals are products of our busy lifestyle. However, there is a growing trend towards organic and locally sourced foods as people become more health conscious.
Yes, I've noticed that. Many people are now interested in where their food comes from.
Exactly. This reflects a shift towards sustainability and awareness of food production. People are more connected to their food sources now than they were in previous decades.
It's amazing how eating habits can tell us so much about history and culture.
It really is. Food is a universal language. It connects us to our past and influences our future.
What do you think will happen to our eating habits in the future?
That's a tough question. With technology advancing rapidly, we might see more lab-grown foods and personalized diets based on genetic information. But I hope we also maintain a connection to traditional foods and cooking methods.
I agree. It's important to keep that cultural connection.
Definitely. Food traditions can bring families and communities together. They create a sense of identity and belonging.
Speaking of traditions, how do different cultures celebrate food?
Each culture has unique food traditions. For example, in Italy, family meals are very important. In contrast, many cultures celebrate with festivals that include special dishes.
That's true. I love how food can bring people together during celebrations.
Yes, it's a way of sharing history and values. Food is often a symbol of love and care.
I can think of so many family recipes that have been passed down through generations.
Exactly. Those recipes often tell a story. They reflect the heritage and experiences of families.
I've learned so much today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, James.
My pleasure, Anna. It's always great to talk about food history. Let's keep exploring these topics together.